Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday. Hope you had an awesome weekend. I certainly did. Entertained by the fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, even though it didn't go the way I anticipated. I did a great job working out. I did a great job with my diet. Anyway, I'm in a good mood. My head is clear. We have a fantastic week of shows planned for you, starting with today. Delano, Squires, and Steve Kim will be here with us. We're going to talk at the beginning of the show about LeBron James and his I Promise School. We'll cover other issues as well, including the Crawford-Spence fight. Steve Kim knows boxing like the back of his hand. We'll talk a little bit about Brittney Griner. We'll talk a little bit about ESPN. And Doris Burke is going to replace Mark Jackson on the #1 NBA team calling the NBA Finals. It sounds like Doris Burke and Doc Rivers are taking over for Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. Love Doris Burke. Don't like what ESPN is doing. I'll talk about that with Steve Kim. Aaron Rodgers had some interesting things to say in defense of Nathaniel Hackett, defending himself from Sean Payton. But anyway, we'll get to that with Steve Kim. That's your favorite part of the show. My favorite part of the show is when I get a chance to talk directly to you about an issue that I am passionate about. And this I Promise thing I'm very passionate about. You need to start pounding that like button. Pound it, pound it, pound it. Let's beat the algorithm. If you're listening on Apple, give me the 5-star review. Write a little review. I need 15 people to review today's show and tell Apple how great we are. I need you to subscribe over Apple. I need you to subscribe to our YouTube page. Let's fight the algorithms that are stacked against us. And I'll deliver. You know why I'm asking you this? Because I'm about to deliver something great to you. A great conversation that Delano and Steve Kim will help me out with as we fan the flames. So let's get to this fire starter. To no one's surprise, LeBron James' solution for the academic woes of at-risk Akron students is failing. 5 years into the well-financed I Promise School, according to news reports, not a single 8th grader can pass Ohio's math test, and just 8% of the entire student body can read at an appropriate level. LeBron James, it appears, is not the second coming of Joe Clark, the baseball bat carrying school principal immortalized in the movie Lean on Me. As an educator, the NBA superstar has far more in common with Elizabeth Halsey, the gold-digging, pot-smoking, corner-cutting harlot from Bad Teacher. I Promise is what happens when public relations managers convince a well-intentioned dumb jock to chase Muhammad Ali's legacy by using fame and influence to concoct a utopian vision of middle school for poor kids. I Promise is a secular, liberal fantasy. Taxpayers foot the overwhelming majority of the bill. A celebrity finances the luxuries, and corporate media write glowing features at the school's launch and return years later to explain away the failure by reminding everyone the decision makers meant well. I Promise uses James's money to buy school uniforms, food for families, job placement services for parents, bikes and helmets for each student, Nike-themed decorations inside the building, and very soon, affordable housing near the school. In LeBron's mind, and the minds of his progressive handlers, a lack of uniforms, food, bikes, affordable housing, and a mother with a high-paying job are all that stood in the way of LeBron being an honor roll student in junior high. 5 years of I Promise blows up that myth. The school released a statement. Because this work requires a long-term commitment, hard work, and a lot of love and care, And that's what we bring each and every day, because the I Promise School is more than a school. We're here for the ups and downs, and we'll continue to wrap around our students. Yeah, that's what they said, wrap around our students and their entire families so they can be successful in school and life, no matter the challenges and obstacles that come their way. Derek Hall, the president of the school board, was a bit more straightforward. He said, for me, as a school board member, I just think about all the resources that we're providing, and I'm just disappointed. I don't think it doesn't appear we're seeing the kind of change that we would expect to see. Clearly, this man has not been paying close attention. America has been throwing money at schools for decades without any discernible progress. In order to excel, poor kids need the exact same thing as rich kids: a father in the home, preferably two of them. One should be called Daddy, and the other should be called Jesus Christ or God. Kids need dads more than free lunch, bicycles, school uniforms, Nike shoes, and affordable housing. No serious person denies this. LeBron doesn't deny it. He's rich, famous, in great health, and could live the life of Hugh Hefner if he desired. He chose to marry his high school sweetheart and build a family. He's given his 3 children what he was denied in childhood: a stable home with 2 parents. He had every conceivable option and chose marriage and family. He should use his money, fame, and influence to promote marriage within the Black community to which he proclaims allegiance. How? By partnering with a church in Akron to promote the benefits of biblical marriage and a close relationship with our real Father, Jesus Christ. Any athlete or celebrity serious about addressing the pathologies plaguing poor Black people should partner with a faith leader and church. You can't trust greedy preachers, you say? Okay. Can you trust the Black lesbian mansion purchasing Marxists who founded Black Lives Matter? Is it wiser to blow your money and credibility on bikes, helmets, and sneakers for junior high students? Black kids do not know or they have an improper relationship with their fathers, Daddy and Jesus. That is at the root of all of our problems. Affordable housing is a poor substitute for dear old dads. How many government and celebrity financed stepdaddies, welfare, affirmative action, social justice initiatives, criminal justice reform, etc., have to fail before we accept God's family design as the solution? I promise is the definition of insanity. Only God's promise will work. Only the nuclear family can fix what's wrong in America. There are countless studies proving that intact families with involved dads produce high-achieving kids regardless of economic status or race. LeBron knows this. But it's much easier to finance a small percentage of a school than to stand against the liberal matriarchy. It sounds like I'm picking on LeBron James. I'm not. I used to think the same foolish stuff. In my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I did not place a high enough priority on family. I thought money could fix and or improve everything. I thought responsibility for and accountability to children and a spouse impeded happiness and fulfillment. I thought zip codes and economic status explained achievement gaps. I was a fool. I was not alone. LeBron James isn't alone either. Most of America, including the American citizens claiming religious faith, do not really comprehend the importance of fathers. We give it lip service, but we don't really believe it. I'm going to share a story. I won't use a name because I don't want to embarrass someone close to me. But someone close to me considers herself a devout Christian. She had a short-lived marriage years ago. She tells everyone she made a mistake by marrying a man who had a poor relationship with his mother. She used to say all the time, you can measure the quality of a man by how he treats his mom. Keep in mind, she's a self-described devout Christian. Her ex-husband never knew his biological father, never read the Bible, and was at best agnostic when it came to faith in God. She thinks the problem with her ex was his relationship with his mother. The man didn't know either one of his fathers. That's why he broke his marital vows, drank and gambled to excess, and came and went as he pleased. The success and failure of man can be best understood through examining our obedience to and relationship with our fathers. Women think the world revolves around them and their relationship with material items. In our matriarchal culture, men think like women. We cover our insecurities with jewelry, designer clothes, and sex. We seek to eliminate character-building hardships in pursuit of safety and convenience. We value brand-building attention far more than difficult solutions. I Promise enhanced LeBron James's brand. Taking a Knee enhanced Colin Kaepernick's brand. The NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball all enhanced their ESG corporate credit scores by supporting Black Lives Matter. Explaining that women need a husband and children need a father obedient to God will get you labeled a misogynist. I'm a misogynist because I believe men obedient to God is the solution for I Promise School and the academic achievement of all kids, but in particular Black kids who 75% of them don't have a father in the home. Another large swath of them have no religious grounding, don't know they have a father in heaven, that they have a higher authority, a creator they have to answer to. They have no relationship with either one of their fathers. And we wonder why they can't pass a basic math test, why only 8% of them can read at an appropriate level. It's not the amount of money spent on these schools. We've been throwing money at schools for years, resources for years. LeBron James is so far removed from his area of expertise. I'm gonna invest $1 million, $2 million, whatever, from the LeBron James Family Foundation to pay for all these extra incidentals, these things that would have made me happy when I was a kid. If I had a bike and a helmet, and if they had served me all the proper hamburgers and pizza, I'd have been so happy. Life would have been perfect. If I had affordable housing around my school, I would have been such a great student. No, man. If your daddy had been in the home, you would have been a far better student. You wouldn't have to rely on basketball to take care of you. And look, I'm glad basketball is there to take care of you. I'm not trying to hate on your athletic skills and gift, but all that's outside your control. If LeBron James was 5'10", Lord knows where he would be. If he were 5'10" and a father in his life, both of them, Lord knows where he would be. He'd be in a better spot than the kids that don't have a father in the home or a relationship with our Father in heaven. These are just facts. Even liberal non-believers, this is what drives me insane about them. Many of these liberals that preach all of this garbage, they're in intact marriages. They're sacrificing for their kids. They're fighting through a marriage to better their children. They think so little of people with dark skin, they think we're incapable of doing that, of making that sacrifice, of buying into the most fundamental design in human history: man, woman, and child. LeBron James has bought the hype. We, as a whole, the black community as a whole, many of us have bought the hype. Oh, I mean, when I sit here and think about, oh God, if my husband who cheated on me, who was irresponsible, who gambled, drank to excess, who did all, if he had just been better to his mother, he would have been a perfect husband. Now, I know he had no relationship with God. Oh, I know he never met his real father. But man, if he had treated his mother better, he'd have been a great husband. This is insanity, man. This is what believers think. They have so little understanding of what's really going on and what's really undermining America as a whole. Because again, there's a lot of people that are married that aren't really in a proper marriage. There's improper male leadership, and there's a wife who doesn't want to follow the improper leadership or the proper leadership of her husband. And we wonder why our kids in great numbers are choosing bizarre sexual identities at age 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. We're out of order. We have no respect for male leadership. We have no understanding of the power of fathers, properly motivated fathers. No understanding. Delano's going to join me here on the other side of this. Before we get to Delano, I want to talk to you guys. I didn't bring my Patriot Mobile phone out to the set. I left it back in my office. But you guys know I made the switch to Patriot Mobile, and I'm glad that I did. The phone has worked beautifully for me. Every day we hear about another familiar brand selling out their customers and going woke. Americans are sick and tired of having leftist propaganda jammed into every product we consume. Woke mobile companies are no different. For years, they've been dumping millions into liberal causes. And we had to take it because you need a cell phone and probably thought there was no alternative. It's not true. I want you to make the switch today. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider offering dependable nationwide coverage on all 3 major networks. So you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to in your area, minus the leftist propaganda. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, Second Amendment, and our military veterans and first responders. Their 100% US-based customer service team makes switching easy. Keep your phone number too. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Jason or call 878-PATRIOT. Get free activation today with the offer code JASON. Ask about their coverage guarantee while you're there. Get the same dependable service and take a stand for your values. Make the switch today. patriotmobile.com/Jason or call 878-PATRIOT. Keep pounding that like button. Keep giving me those 5-star reviews on Apple. Make sure you're leaving a comment on Apple. And you can email me and us at fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. Delano Squires on the other side of this to talk about LeBron James. Regrets and our decisions, we all want to go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom. All right, welcome back. You just heard me rant and rave about LeBron James and the I Promise School. Now we'll turn to Washington, D.C. and Delano Squires. See if I'm right or wrong on my take. Delano, welcome back to the show. Obviously, I'm not surprised that the I Promise School doesn't seem to be delivering on its promises. I think it's an example of throwing money at a problem that is connected to, it's a political solution to a spiritual problem. The breakdown of family explains it all. LeBron James should know. We should all know by this time. It doesn't matter what uniforms they wear, what food they're fed, how close they live to the school. If there's no father, either father, but there's no father, you're not going to get good results. Your take on my fire starter in mono?
Yeah, Jason, I mean, I share your general sentiment, right? That family structure is critically important to the educational outcomes of children, any child, regardless of ethnic background. I also obviously believe that having a strong spiritual foundation is also, very important for children. Now, obviously, different families believe different things, but it's no coincidence to me that when you tend to look at sort of educational outcomes, and whether you're looking at, let's say, SAT scores or the average amount of time that kids, spend doing homework, there's a particular pattern that emerges. And I saw this doing research, on the affirmative action case. It's Asian, white, Hispanic, black. That tracks average SAT scores. That tracks average number of hours spent doing homework. That tracks the percentage of each group that does homework at least 5 times a week. And it tracks the out of wedlock birth rates from lowest to highest: Asian, white, Hispanic, black. So I don't doubt that these things are connected. And I think a lot more has to be done to sort of strengthen those family units, particularly for the future and for the future of our children. But I agree. And as someone, I'm not a teacher. I've never worked in schools, but I've worked with educators, having worked in local government for a long time. And I know resources are important, but they're not nearly as important as most people would tell you. And I think the results from his school are an example of that, where you could address every material need that a child has. You could do the food pantries, the bicycle helmets, buy uniforms, so on and so forth. But you need strong administrators, you need a strong curriculum, dedicated teachers, and you need a home environment that is conducive to learning. Because if not, what'll happen is that the school will spend 12 hours a day trying to pour stuff in, and then kids go home oftentimes to an environment that scrubs those things off. Because if the kid at home spends from the age, let's say, of 5 till they reach middle school, hearing Cardi B lyrics more often than they hear Aesop's fables, the school is doing its best to educate a child in spite of that child's home environment, as opposed to working in partnership with parents and families and everyone pulling in the same direction. So I'm not surprised. I mean, those numbers are abysmal. To not have one student, being able to pass the state exam is abysmal. But I'm not surprised given the struggles that we see across the country in public education.
So I argue that LeBron James, other athletes and celebrities, if they really want to make an impact, partner with a faith leader, partner with a church, do a lot of messaging around family and around the importance and the benefits of family. Go and I get, we have this whole mentality around ministers that they all want Cadillacs and shiny shoes and nice suits, and you can't trust the minister. And I get some of that. But if I have a choice between investing in a minister and a church as opposed to investing in Black Lives Matter, I'm going to choose the minister and church every time. I'd rather throw money away chasing God than chasing all of this other stuff, and that does not work. And I've seen, and this is where this thing has really hit home for me in terms of the relationships I've built here through Fearless, getting close and understanding Anthony Walker's walk with God. His father passed away when he was very young. And we'll have Anthony talk about it on the show this week if I can fit it and squeeze it in. And we'll squeeze it in at some point, if not this week, at some point. But Anthony talks passionately about his mother, his grandmother, and his church telling him, you have another father. You actually have the supreme father. It's Jesus Christ. And that had, his mother eventually got remarried, and he's got a very good stepfather that he's close to. But Jesus Christ became his all-encompassing father. And that's what helped it. And when I see us as a black community turn secular and have no relationship with Jesus as our father, and we know the statistics on absentee fathers or fathers outside the home, we have no father in our community, and we have chaos in our community and kids that are underachieving. And just as you said, the stats all talk about this correlation. So am I naive for thinking that athletes, celebrities, if they were genuine, they should be investing money in the promotion of fatherhood rather than bicycle helmets and bikes?
So a couple of things, and I'll let Pastor Anthony get to this whenever you talk to him. But as a theological point, I think the scripture would describe Jesus as our brother more so than our father, right? With God the Father in heaven as the supreme Father, creator of the entire world, the entire universe, and Christ being his only begotten Son. But I take the point, right? Which is having a foundation, having our identity rooted deeply in our Creator. So I'm with you on that point. But let me say this, and this is going to be fearless doing public policy and culture work. Not only do I agree with your point about LeBron and the NBA, I've said this publicly before. I don't know if I've written it because it takes a little while to work out, but I'm going to say it quickly. I believe that the NBA Players Foundation, and I know it exists, and I know they have a lot of money, because when I was working in gun violence prevention in D.C., at one point we were talking about ways to work with them. The NBA Players Foundation should take their extensive resources and run ads, public awareness campaigns in every single city in which the NBA does business. And those ads should promote, whether you want to call it success sequence, marriage before carriage, no ringy, no dingy, wedding before wombs, however you want to phrase it. But the purpose of it should be to tell young men in those communities, Cleveland, Detroit, Miami, New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, New Orleans, right? Put a ring on it before you put a baby in her. And they should feature LeBron James. And the ad should say something to the effect of, guys, take it from me. I'm King James. Every king needs a queen. And they got, they have Savannah there, and they have the three kids. And all of the married players in the NBA, Zion Williamson, sorry, you're out of this. All the other guys that got baby mama drama, we're not promoting that today. They should get all of those married men to be featured with their families. If you want to talk about black love, here it is. And run those ads all across the country in every city the NBA does business. And hopefully the NFL would join them. And Major League Baseball. And Major League Soccer. And the NHL. So you get a wide demographic sort of representation. And the thing is, these leagues have money. But what have the leagues been promoting since 2020, and certainly in 2020? Black Lives Matter, social justice, social inequity, all of these things that these guys were having jerseys that said, love us, education reform, things you can't even, like, what does that mean? And let me calm myself down. Why is it that such a strong black man needs to press his case to a white paying fan that person needs to love him in order for him to live his truest and best life? I want these guys to press a message to the guys who look up to them and to say, this is the life that I want for you, the same life that I live. I want that for you, to find your queen, to have your princes and princesses, to build your kingdom, and to propagate that onto the generations. That's what the NBA Players Foundation should be doing, and they should make LeBron James the front man in the face of that.
Let me add to your policy suggestions, because we've already seen Black Lives Matter on the court.
Right.
Let's put Fathers Matter on the court. Let's put Fathers Matter on the court. We've seen the NFL players in the aftermath of Colin Kaepernick. Hey guys, NFL player, they demanded that NFL owners take $100 million and invest in criminal justice reform that Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Bolden and a few other handful of players, they can run around the country and pretend like they're Johnny Cochran and can fix the criminal justice system. They convinced NFL, why can you not? And I don't know anybody that would object if NFL and NBA players went to ownership and said, hey, listen here, during the month of January, we want 50% off discounted tickets to every Black man, his wife, and their kids to show up at NBA. You bring your family of 4, you show your marriage certificate and your kids, you can bring them all to these NBA games for half price. They can do that for less than $100 million, or maybe it costs them $100 million. But if they started catering everything and putting all the messaging, like, we're going to bend over backwards for the Black family because there's a crisis here and this is our league. And they know, they're looking at what's going on with the ball kids and all these other kids that are coming into the NBA with these strong Black fathers pushing them and in their corner. They know this works. So why can't they demand that? They'd rather demand, let's give a bunch of money to some Black lesbians that started Black Lives Matter. Delano, and you told me this morning, and I'm glad you pointed this out, and we're gonna play the clip. I'm gonna transition, we'll play the clip and then you comment here, because this was your idea, something you spotted. Jaylen Brown signs a huge contract with the Boston Celtics, and here's what he was talking about after signing that contract.
Jaylen, what do you plan to do with the generational wealth? I mean, what do you plan to do off and on the floor with this new contract?
Well, that's a great question. I want to launch a project to bring Black Wall Street here to Boston. I want to attack the wealth disparity here. I think there's analytics that supports that, stimulating the wealth gap could actually be something that could be betterment for the entire economy. With the biggest financial deal in NBA history, it makes sense to talk about 1, your investment in community, but 2, also, the wealth disparity here that nobody wants to talk about. It's top 5 in the U.S. It's something that we can all improve on. It's unsettling. And I think through my platform, through influential partners, through selected leaders, government officials, a lot who are in this room, that we can come together and create new jobs, new resources, new businesses, new ideas that could, highlight minorities, but also stimulate the economy and the wealth gap at the same time. I think that could be a mix of commercial entities, real estate, residentials as well. Boston could be, a fully integrated, self-sufficient, hub, attacking minorities and stimulating the wealth gap. I think Boston could be a pilot, not just for wealth disparity here in the U.S., but also for around the world. So you asked me what I wanted to do or what I want to do. One, I want to, attack that wealth gap here in Boston, create a project. Also, I want to help stimulate the overall economy, and I want to bring Black Wall Street here to Boston.
Your thoughts?
So I want to go back real quick to your idea, and I agree with that 100%. And I was actually thinking one of the things that teams could do, and they could target it, let's say, to lower income couples, is that, when let's say Philadelphia, guy from North Philly marries a young lady, they're in their mid-20s, right? They may not make a ton of money, but he's saying, look, I want to do something different than what I've seen in my community. They should get, season tickets or 3 tickets to the games of their choice as an incentive to say, look, we want to show that we want to encourage the right type of decision making in our communities. So we can use the resources that we have, and it's not going to be, a ton of tickets, But we want to throw everything that we have at these issues so that the young men who are raised in these communities will not have to look to their coaches when they're 8 and 10 and 12 years old to be the first male authority figure that they come across, that they'll have that authority from the time that they leave the hospital, because they will be being raised by a married mother and father in a loving, low conflict home. I would love to see professional leagues get behind that. But with the Black Wall Street thing,
let me
right?
stop you there. You don't have
Okay.
to respond to Janet, because I'm glad you went back to that, because it reminds me of, I don't know in your youth that they were still doing this, but I'm just, as I'm sitting here thinking this through, it's like, McDonald's used to give out free cheeseburgers for A's and B's. You could take your report card up to McDonald's and get free cheeseburger and fries and all this stuff. It's the only time I ever made good grades is in pursuit of some McDonald's. And so it's like, this sounds crazy, but it's not crazy what I'm suggesting or what we're suggesting.
No, not at all.
There can be incentives from these leagues that favors the responsible men and women who commit to each other in marriage and to raising kids, and they should receive benefits, and there would be no objection. I don't know any evangelicals of any color who would be upset if the NBA or NFL was like, you know what, we got a crisis going on in the black family, and so we're offering these special incentives. I don't know anybody that would object to that.
I mean, I think the only people, not evangelicals, but there's some groups who would object. Any of the sort of women-led Marxist feminist groups who see the patriarchy itself as oppressive and a problem would object. There are also some black progressive groups who would say you're moralizing, you're blaming the victim, you are trying to tell people what they should do with their lives. And part of the reason that they do this, Jason, is because for these people, the black community's two biggest problems are systemic racism and wealth inequality. And that's why I want to get to the Jaylen Brown piece. But when you think that way, oftentimes what happens is that the two primary solutions are bigger government and better white people. And that's why all of these things, they may use the term social justice and, reform of one type or another, racial justice and, all these other reforms. But when you see black folks as the eternal victims of an oppressive and white supremacist society, then all of your moral appeals have to be made either to institutions and or white people. And the leagues feel comfortable doing that, because anytime somebody asks something to black folks, it makes them feel like, oh, I'm blaming the victim, unless it's donate to our cause and go vote. Those are the two things that the left generally feel comfortable telling black people to do. Now, and get your COVID shot. That's the third one. That was added, since 2020. But if it's, put a ring on her before you put a baby in her, then that's controversial, that's moralizing, and so on and so on and so forth. But real quick, the Jaylen Brown piece I thought was really interesting. I actually think this is the economic development version of what LeBron tried to do with his school. So let me say this. I think it's good for players to feel a level of investment and connectedness to the cities in which they play. I think that's a good thing, right? If I remember hearing stories or reading stories of, like Willie Mays would be playing stickball with the kids in New York City, after, a doubleheader or something to that effect. So I think it's good when guys feel a certain connection to the city. That being said, this sort of gap way of thinking about life, I think is very troubling is not the right word. I think it's short-sighted. One, because it presupposes that the person you're trying to catch up to stops moving, right? So there's a black-white wealth gap. And so, well, we want to close that. Well, you can't make all the white folks stop moving. So, for instance, and I said this, me and my friends were texting about this weekend. Let's say the average, the median wealth for a black home in Boston is $50,000. The median wealth for a white home in Boston is $100,000. Let's say those are the numbers. I'm making them up, but let's say that's the case. Jaylen Brown does his work. 5-10 years from now, the median wealth for a black household is $100,000. But now the median wealth for a white household is 160. Now, the black households in 10 years have doubled their median wealth, but the gap has grown larger. And if you're a gap person, you're going to say, well, this is a failure because the gap has gotten bigger. And this is one of the reasons why I don't like the sort of gap analysis. Is because it always keeps you focused on what somebody else is doing and not maximizing your talent, your energies, your potential, and saying, I'm going to push the ball as far forward as I can based on what I have in my hand, not what somebody else has. So while I understand what he's trying to do, I'd love to see what he actually does and to see the results. But when you tie your success to what white folks are doing, or any group for that matter, you put yourself in a very, very vulnerable position. Because, Jason, something could happen where white folks' median wealth could go to zero. All number of things could happen. And then overnight, the gap will be closed. So if everybody has nothing, is Jaylen Brown going to consider that a success? It's, oh, wow, there's no black-white wealth gap. Yeah, because nobody has anything, right? The government owns it all, and we live in a socialist, let's say in the future we live in some sort of socialist economy, we'll all be the same. So I don't think closing and stimulating the wealth gap, words that have no actual meaning, right? And I'm not trying to diss Jaylen Brown. He's a good basketball player. But I don't think those words have any particular meaning. I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. And then real quick, as a journalist, I don't know if you picked up on this part of it. There's no way that question was organic, right? That had to be a plant, because what are you going to do with the generational? Who even speaks that way? What are you going to do with the generational wealth that you get from this thing? And one thing that I'll say is this goes back to the point that we were making before. Yes, Jaylen Brown is about to come into generational wealth, but if Jaylen Brown has no queen and no heirs, he's just going to be a rich man in a big house. Because generational wealth requires generations. And that's one of the things that the current generation is not building. And I think that's one of the reasons so many people in our community talk so much about our ancestors. Because for as difficult as the situations they went through, I mean, real oppression and discrimination, they were in the business of building things. And we are in the business of consuming things. So I hope that the first thing Jaylen Brown does to secure his generational wealth is to build a foundation where he creates generations. And then he can, do that in his own home first before he passes it on to the other people of Boston.
Here's my problem with it. It's a lot of buzzwords. It was a orchestrated question that he was prepared for, and you could tell by all the buzzwords he tied together on cue that he was prepared. Someone had been told to ask this question. But more than just, stimulating the wealth gap and blah, blah, all these talking points that someone's gassed him up for, he's not qualified. He's a basketball player. And I don't say that to dismiss him. But this is my problem with LeBron in the I Promise School. LeBron rarely gets off the first page of a book, but now he's an educator. Jaylen Brown is a hell of a basketball player, but now because of someone's giving him a bunch of money for playing basketball, he's now an entrepreneurial guru that has a vision for what Boston should do. And I got a former NFL player that probably made $50-60 million in the NFL, and maybe he has a third of that money left over. And this guy thinks he's got all the solutions as well. He hops in my Instagram DMs, and I'm just, cut it out, man. How come we can't stick to things we actually know? And again, I don't know if Jaylen Brown has any kids. I know he had a mom and a dad. His dad, I think, was some kind of professional boxer or whatever, and someone's influenced him. But for LeBron James, I'm going to reduce this to LeBron James. Like, he knows the damage of not having a father in his life. He committed himself to not doing that to his own kids, marrying his high school sweetheart. This is something he actually knows about. Yeah. Everybody knows about parenting and the importance of it, and we're all trying to outsmart ourselves. This is all explained in the first book of Genesis. You don't even have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to know about anything. You don't even have to know 2 + 2 = 4 to know man, woman, and child. Man being obedient to God is the greatest gift you can give a woman or a child or society. And part of that obedience is finding your way. And again, I acknowledge, I failed. I was caught up in money. I'm trying to teach you from mistakes that I made and placing way too much importance on, I want to make this amount of money. I want to have this much success and responsibility to wife and kid. That would impede my happiness and taking on responsibility. I'm trying to tell you from mistakes that I've made and now getting a much bigger, broader, more sophisticated understanding of what's going wrong in the world. The abandonment of family, something that we all should know innately and we can all speak about. It's like black people, we all think we're experts on race because of our skin color. But we all act as if we know nothing about family and raising kids, even though we've all either been kids or we've created kids, but we act like we know nothing about it. And it just baffles me that it's a layup what the solution is. But no one wants to invest in that. We want, I promise school helps me build my brand and it makes me look good. I get to pretend to be Muhammad Ali. Economic investment could make me a lot of money and get me on the cover of magazines as the basketball player that saved Boston or did this. It's all brand building. If you stand on something as simple as like, hey man, we're designed to find a wife, have kids, make some sacrifices for those kids, and do what the Asians do. They marry, huddle up as a family, and the mom whips them kids until they all get straight A's, and it's all out there. The solution, but none of us. We never talk about it. We never ask, oh no, what we need is bicycles and helmets.
Well, I think one of the things that's happened, and I'm glad you sort of gave LeBron's backstory, because I think in many ways I would connect him with another very prominent, black person who came from a single family home, which is, Barack Obama, right? The former president. And he talked about the pain of growing up without a father. And he is probably the last sort of national Democrat who talked about the importance of marriage, fatherhood, and family as it relates to social outcomes. Now, whenever he did that, the people who would hammer him the most were always black progressives on his left. It was the Brittney Coopers, the Michael Eric Dysons, the Melissa Harris Perrys.
Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid.
The Joy Reid. And Melissa Harris Perry actually did a segment, this was in 2014, called about the magical black daddy myth. Watching that segment actually made me want to start my own blog, because I said, these people are nuts. They got Michael Eric Dyson talking down about black fathers on MSNBC. And then what does he do when he go talk to Tucker Carlson on Fox News, on Tucker Carlson's show? Beg white people for reparations. So I think the left, and particularly men on the left, got the message. If you talk about the importance of marriage, family, and fatherhood as it relates to social outcomes, not promoting your own relationship goals, black love, you're on the cover of Essence, but outcomes, you are going to get hammered by your left. Unless you're talking about two things that have to do with the black family or the family. The left's preferred vision of family starts with abortion, so the actual destruction of life, and continues with pride. So if you Google marriage on the NAACP's Twitter feed, I guarantee you're going to come back with marriage equality. Same thing with the National Urban League. Any of these people, if you search their Twitter feed and you put in marriage, it's gonna come back with marriage equality. And if you search abortion, it's gonna come back with dozens of results. But if you put in natural family, nuclear family, fatherhood, well, unless it's election season, it's probably, you're probably not gonna get too far. So I think there needs to be a concerted effort from any institution that says that it works on behalf of or speaks for Black people to make improving the relationships of Black men and Black women a key part of its mission. This goes for HBCUs. I think every HBCU should have that as part of their charter. They could run wife school, husband boot camp on campus. This goes for what we call the Black church, the few who haven't sold out to politics. And this goes to any of these institutions in which Black men predominate the workforce. So the NFL and the NBA want to do messaging and raise awareness, everybody's favorite phrase. They have something that they can focus on when it comes to the family.
So I know that there are people on social media that have already started down the path of this story is unfair. The I Promise School caters to at-risk kids that were doing poorly in other schools, and it's an unreasonable expectation to expect them to pass these tests or to show positive results. And the school board president, Derek Hall, he acknowledged, they're like, hey, these results are disappointing. And I don't, based off the research that I could find, I don't know if Derek Hall was a big supporter of the I Promise School at its launch. I think he was a skeptic going in and a non-believer in that Nike sneakers and bicycles and helmets were going to improve math scores. And so he may be dancing on the grave of something that he may be having an I told you so moment. But the school released a statement, the I Promise School released a statement that, that didn't offer up some great excuse, didn't say, hey, our kids are coming from, the statement acknowledged like, hey, we're here for the ups and downs. And so I don't think there's any way to fix up these results and cover them with excuses. And I don't want to make too much of the movie Lean on Me, but it was based on a true story about Joe Clark going into a school system that was failing and turning that thing around by any means necessary. And yes, he pushed some kids out of school so the kids that actually wanted to learn could learn or whatever. And so I'm just sorry, this thing launched in 2018. By 2023, you ain't got nobody that can pass this math test? Not one person? I'm just sorry. I don't think you can rationalize and excuse this sort of failure.
Yeah, I mean, education policy, particularly on a local level, is very difficult in terms of wrapping your hands around all the different factors. So one big factor is that the role of the teachers' unions. Now, I know that this is a public school. I'm not sure if it's sort of officially designated as a public charter school in Akron. And because if it is, then that would explain why, someone from that could partially explain why someone from the city wasn't particularly keen on this, because there are entrenched interests, particularly in the local education level, who are against any form of school choice, charter schools, voucher programs, universal school choice, any of those things, right? So I state that. But there's some truths on all sides, right? If you're taking kids from sort of the roughest backgrounds, you're probably not going to get a 1-year turnaround and turn these into kids that can go right into Exeter or some Tony private prep school. It's probably not going to happen. But one of the things that has happened is that when it comes to education, for the vast majority of us, those conversations start in the schoolhouse and not in the home. And that is one of the primary problems. And this happens with education. Again, during my, working in local government for a long time, and particularly last year in gun violence prevention, even when it comes to crime, when a 15-year-old carjacks somebody, the first thing somebody says, well, what was the school doing? Well, what resources were made available to his parents? And I'm saying, and I literally, and this actually happened.
Did they have a basketball court in the neighborhood? They would have been playing basketball if they,
and that's exactly how it goes, because somebody say, oh, we need to extend the hours of the rec center. So people think, well, because the rec center closes at 9 p.m. instead of 1 a.m., then these guys they have nothing to do, because what 14-year-old is not out on the streets at 1 a.m., trying to club somebody over the head. But at one point, I asked a deputy mayor for public safety, I said, I noticed we don't really talk about families that much. And I said to him on the call, there was like 20 other people on the call, I said, if my two sons ever start cutting up in our neighborhood and they was bopping people over the head and stealing their cars, the first call that you should make is to me, because I am their father. You are not responsible for my children. And he was like, yeah, man, I agree with you. And I don't doubt that he does, or he did. But that doesn't translate to elected officials, because nobody wants to feel like they're blaming the victim. And Jason, if you want to understand how far this goes, in DC, the city called the guys who were both most likely to be gun violence victims and perpetrators people of promise. And they moved them up the food chain for access to resources. Now ask yourself how it would go for a mayor of Indianapolis or Cleveland or Detroit or Baltimore if the people doing all the shooting in the neighborhoods and mowing down black folk were white guys, and the city said, these are people of promise, and we want these people of promise to have the premium positions for construction jobs and all sorts of other government positions. And this is the problem with how people approach these issues. And this is what happens when you have a worldview that is not biblically based. When you have a worldview that thinks that civil government is the highest authority, that it can create the world that it desires through the manipulation of language, we don't have any more homeless people. We don't have a homeless problem. We have an unhoused persons problem, right? We don't, that can create pregnant men and women's penises, that they can create a world out of nothing just by using language. What you eventually get to is bad policy based on a fundamentally flawed vision of human nature and people in general. And that part of that vision removes the family completely and all the things that families provide for children: a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, moral formation, discipline, structure, order, and it outsources all of that to civil servants, elected officials, and unelected bureaucrats. And that's a problem. So I'm not surprised that LeBron is having struggles at his school, because a lot of these kids are probably coming from very rough backgrounds. That doesn't mean that they can't learn. It just may mean that there need to be some interventions: longer school days, school 6 days a week, school in the summer, more rigorous instruction. But
Delano,
these things
I'm
are
gonna
not
give you
going
the
to happen
solution.
overnight.
If LeBron really wants to improve that school, and he wants to stay the course with investing his money in schools, he should take about $2 or $3 million and incentivize men to come teach at that school. He fill that school up with a bunch of male teachers. Take the Nike gym shoes out, take off the uniforms. I wouldn't even give them free food. I'd give them men, serve them men, and let them eat government cheese. And I ate government cheese when I was young. My father hustled food stamps from women when I was young, and we were living in a 400 square. Now, put some men in that school, pay the extra money, incentivize, overpay some men to go in there and teach. I bet you'll get some results then. I can guarantee it. But you know what? I'm gonna attempt to put together a Twitter Spaces tomorrow on this topic, a further discussion, get Anthony involved, yourself, see Virgil and see who else we can gather up, because I would like to broaden this conversation up to the audience and let other people chime in. But anyway, thank you, Delano. Great job as always. We'll see you tomorrow. You can go to youtube.com/Jason Whitlock, hit notifications, hit subscribe. Make sure you give us that 5-star review if you're listening on Apple. Hit the likes button. Steve Kim, McCree, and Cosell.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
Depending upon your perspective, we're about to get to the best part of the show. Depends on your perspective. From my perspective, some of yours, this is the best part of the show. It's time for the Korean Cosell, Steve Kim, talk a little sports, continue the conversation about LeBron James. And we'll start there, Steve. We'll start, you can follow in behind me and Delano and my fire starter. Your thoughts on the I Promise School not living up to its promises?
Well, yeah, they never actually promised a diploma or education. It's just look, this was a very, very expensive tax write-off, or maybe inexpensive based on his tax bracket for LeBron. I find it interesting, though, that when you don't give LeBron the credit for starting a school, which he really didn't technically, they point out that he did. Like, this is all him. But once you bring up stories like this, then it's like, well, you can't blame this all on LeBron. Hey, folks, is it his school or not? But on a serious level, this goes back to deeper-seated problems within the community. And, I'll tie this into Jaylen Brown, the guy who just signed a really lucrative deal with the Boston Celtics. And his whole messaging during his press conference last week was the wealth gap, the wealth disparity, and I'm going to do something, and we're going to do Black Wall Street again. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, does that mean you actually putting your money down to build properties and create jobs and other Black business entrepreneurs, or does that really mean we're just going to beg white corporations and use our white guilt to get more money? I'm being dead serious. I don't want to be insensitive, but that's the truth. That is Black Wall Street, your vision of it, Jaylen, going to be about actual Black entrepreneurial dollars and investment and Black ownership, and then a lot of Black employment, so then you could actually build roots and grow it. That's the question, because but the whole time I'm watching this, he never actually talked about what created the wealth gap or what creates situations like what is going on in Akron at that school. It goes back to what you've harped on for a long time, Jason. If you do not have nuclear families, if you don't have a strong family ties, you don't have fatherhood or male leadership, that's the root of the problem. And until you get to that, you can do virtue signaling with schools, putting your name on it, writing checks, pledging that there's going to be corporate sponsorship of my initiatives in a certain city that I play for. None of it will matter until, again, you plant the seeds of getting back to nuclear families with, and again, this is the key, with fathers back in the household.
Steve, I get great point. You're coming right in off of what me and Delano were talking about as it relates to Jaylen Brown. We literally just had that discussion. You're out in LA, you couldn't see it. But I completely agree with you, and I'll restate what I said earlier. These guys love talking about things and supporting things they have zero insight, zero real world experience in. Hey, I'm going to fix schools. Hey, I'm going to start Black Wall Street. Hey, while playing in the NBA and not knowing what I don't know and having been ushered through school most of my life because I'm a great athlete. And again, I know I'm generalizing, but again, I used to be a decent, captain of my nationally ranked high school football team. I know how I was treated. I know how Jeff George was treated. I know how great athletes are treated along the way. These aren't the future visionaries for Black Wall Street or for how schools should actually operate. Here, what they do know about, and what I tried to simplify my entire discussion down to, what they do know about is fathering kids, at least impregnating, having kids. LeBron seems to be a committed father and husband. I don't know Jaylen Brown's situation, but this is an area where people actually have life experience. They know the damage of not having a father in the home, either through their own experience or having witnessed it among friends and family. But instead, we've convinced all these guys they have to be more than an athlete. They have to be more than their life experiences. They have to be experts on everything: criminal justice reform, policing, schools, and Black Wall Street.
You know, Jason, what's interesting is that I don't expect a guy like LeBron James, whose education ended in the 12th grade, to be some sort of epicenter of educational reform at all. But this is a fact, and Ak Nation News has done many videos about this, and he's brought up statistics, he's done a lot of research. A lot of these school districts which have failing standards, or students who cannot read or do arithmetic at grade level across the board, you know, they're actually well-funded. They're actually well-funded. This whole stereotype that we need more resources. I hate to tell you this, it's a cultural issue. And from the very beginning, if you are not teaching these kids the importance of education, showing up on time, being respectful and paying attention, and getting off the Xbox once in a while, and understanding you're probably not going to make the NBA, okay, you're not going to be a rapper, that's like hitting the lottery, until you have better guidance and leadership and perspective, okay, and priorities, it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, by the time you get to 7th or 8th grade, there are no solutions, as Ak Nation would say. I think it's too late. And I hate to be that cynical about it, but that's the truth, because I don't see enough harsh truths being talked about enough. Now, going back to the whole Jaylen Brown agenda of Black Wall Street, you don't even have to do Black Wall Street. And I've said this to you in the past. If there are 100 to thousands of Black athletes, or any athletes, who want to make a difference in their community, but collectively as Black Americans, what has kept them from the last 50 years of taking their $1 million plus salaries and putting it into real estate, creating businesses in those depressed areas? Why? I mean, I want to be very blunt about this. Stop complaining about Koreans having liquor stores and hair salons and all that. Those athletes could have put those exact same businesses in there. They did not. So when I hear that, I push back and I say, well, wait a minute. Those liquor stores with Koreans are there for a reason. No one else wants to be there. The Koreans and whoever have said, we're going to live the American dream. We're going to be in an area where people hate us. There's going to be a lot of animosity, but we're actually going to put the money down. There's been nothing keeping all of these athletes from coming to these communities and saying, you know what, we're going to stop gentrification. I am going to create low-income housing that's going to serve my people and still make money at it. There comes a point in time you can't just start pointing fingers at all of society when other cultures are coming in, actually setting roots and creating their own industries.
They're doing it, Steve, and I hate to tell you what Koreans and Asians are doing, but I'm going to in this instance. They're doing it, Steve. The reason why Koreans can go into depressed communities and build a business is because they have a family structure and a family unit that can be trusted to work in those environments. Many of them live over top of the businesses or inside the businesses, and they have a family structure. And so, again, it's all very simple. It all comes back to family structure. And when your family structure is devoid of male influence and male leadership, you move to a situation where Jaylen Brown is sitting there going, well, who in my family can I trust to be responsible enough?
Yeah.
to actually run these businesses if we did establish them, whining and crying and doing what you talked about, asking Bob Kraft and Jerry Jones and whoever the NBA, Mark Cuban, hey, come spend your money. And be the men behind the puppet strings of Black Wall Street. That's all easy to do and say, but you can't grow flowers in concrete. You need grass and soil, and the grass and soil is the family unit. You're not going to grow anything from this other stuff. And so I hear these guys talking, and they're well-intentioned. They're doing what they've been told, what the liberal corporate media structure has told them they should do, but none of it's based in reality, and it's a failure of black media to even attempt to educate these guys.
But Jason,
Anscape, the undefeated, whatever, should be writing stories. Hey, Jalen, this isn't it. The family unit is how we fix this thing. Let's start there.
And Jason, let's not forget the liberal white media who is just racked with guilt, and none of them will have enough guts to say, hey, Jalen, here's the issue. How much money are you going to put into a depressed area? Let's go back to this issue of the Korean liquor store. In those areas, when a business moves out, let's say it's just through a business decision like Walmart in Chicago, or a local grocer has an incident and they can no longer operate their business within that community. They're just driven out. It's bad for everybody. And then there's a vacancy. That's been happening a lot. And my question is very blunt. Will there be a Jalen Brown to say, oh, there's a local lot that's open. There's a building. I'm going to pay rent and I'm going to create a grocery store because I don't want malt liquor. I don't want Colt 45 sold with my people. Because isn't that the big thing? The exploitation. Won't say anything about the crack dealers, but, sell malt liquor and Coors Light, 40 ounce. It's an issue. Whatever. So if you actually go around to a lot of these depressed areas, there are vacancies all over. There is real estate to be built. So, Jalen, get a group of your athletes because, again, you want to create a black industry. The land is cheap. If it was a monopoly board, it would not be Boardwalk or Park Place. It would actually be like Marvin's Gardens or Oriental Avenue. I think they got to change that nowadays. But that's the real estate is cheap. So when I hear all of these catchphrases, right, like wealth disparity, right, and then what? We live in a capitalistic society, and so a lot of this is hollow. But again, I don't blame just the black media. I think it is the liberal media complex that is at play here that will not push back or ask questions at all.
You're taking me down a rabbit hole where I'm just going to start talking about things I've seen with my own eyes and relating it to the Korean structure and what they've done. In Kansas City, I became very close with Ollie Gates and his family. Anybody that's been to Kansas City knows about the Gates barbecue dynasty. There's like 9 of them across the Kansas City metro area. And they're all run at a very high level. They're very nice, and the food is phenomenal. But it's run by Ollie Gates and his kids. It's his kids. And then they impose their vision on all of their employees, and most Gates, I'd say 80, 90% of the employees are black. They've imposed their standards, their beliefs on their employees. You go into any Gates barbecue, it's run wonderfully. Everybody from the suburbs to the inner city, everybody loves going to Gates barbecue. That's the solution. It starts with a strong family, a strong patriarchal leader like Ollie Gates, who got to be 85, 86 years old now. He has a son, George. He has several daughters. I could name them all, but anyway, I used to be very close to the family. Ollie Gates was in the commercial we did for Speak for Yourself. We flew him out to LA, but that's the motto, and I just don't understand why these athletes won't. I do understand why they won't discuss it. I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
Jason,
Go ahead. Please do.
In Montebello, which is the Bel Air of East LA, right? That there's a particular place that I go to 2-3 times a week. It's called Fruit Revolution on Beverly Boulevard. And I swear to God, this is not a paid plug. I just love these people. It's a Mexican family. They make the best smoothies. I mean, their mango tropic. Oh my God! But I just love the fact I walk in there and I go, "Orale," and they all like, "Hey, Steve." I'm like the Norm. If that was Cheers, I'm Norm. They just love me. Okay, and it's just a small, not small. I don't want to say small. It's a family-run business at all 3 levels. Right? I think there's grandparents there, there's parents, and the kids are there. Very courteous. And I go, and there's businesses like that in East LA run by all sorts of different people. There's an Armenian business, there's some Asian businesses, and there's Mexican. To me, Montebello is the American dream. It's the great American small city / suburb. So it's not, people make it sound like it's just Koreans owning businesses in certain cities. No, if you go to a city and you have strong standards and you have a foundational purpose, this can be done by everybody. And I love going there, even when I don't feel like going there. I feel like going there because, that's a family business. They are living the American dream, and I should do my part to support it. This whole cynical view that if you can't do it unless you're getting a blank check from corporate America, and without them, America's against this, I think it's a completely defeatist attitude.
Steve, I want to move on and talk a little bit. There's several topics I want to get to you, but I'll start here with a easier one. Brittney Griner is taking a 2-game mental rest or recovery or whatever. She's cracking under the pressure. The Phoenix Mercury have been terrible this year. I think they're 6 and 18. For a long time, they had the worst record in the WNBA. Now, by a half game, they don't have the worst record in the NBA. This mentality, this victim's mentality that the team took on, and they're so oppressed, and Brittney needs private flights, and we're victims, and not enough people are coming to the game, and people have to respect Brittney Griner, and Brittney Griner is now a spokesman for in-prison people overseas. It's all too much. Trying to build Brittney Griner into this celebrity, important WNBA player is a joke. This woman is 6'8", looks like a dude, all tatted up. She's got emotional, mental issues and that all go along. Just honest, 6'8" for a woman, that's a burden enough without them trying to pile all this other stuff on and have her be the face of the WNBA and the face of some movement. It doesn't surprise me that she's cracked, that the team has cracked, that the head coach had to be fired 9-10 games into the season. None of this surprised me. Brittney Griner is trying to do way too much, and she's failing.
All right, I'm going to be honest. Alex Stein, this is all your fault. You did this, prime time Stein. But, okay, a couple things here. During this break, I have a feeling she's not going to vacation in Russia. Okay. And the other thing is, I'm pretty sure she didn't crack under the pressure of playing in front of big crowds. But, all right, is William Roden writing a 20,000-word piece for the New York Times Magazine on this? I mean, he said it himself. She's got a lot on her plate. But I don't get this. Most Americans actually don't care. We're apathetic towards her. Like, you would literally have to pay me to watch her. And if I went, I wouldn't even have the energy to heckle her. I live and let live. But this whole notion that somehow now mental illness has become a badge of honor. You know what used to be a badge of honor? Just shutting up, putting your head down, and getting through it and doing your job. I don't find her to be heroic. I don't have any hatred towards her. Do I have any sympathy for that? I can't necessarily say I do because I don't care enough. But what happened to just working through your issues? Because guess what, Jason? Life, it's kind of tough. It's not always easy. But with that said, under her situation, with the money she's making, and money's not everything, but with her, whatever celebrity she has, and the pay that she receives, which is still well above the American average, she's still living a life better than 99% of most Americans and most people across the world. That's the reality. Get over it.
The whole thing, though, Steve, is like when they design a role for you in society that you're not fit to play, I believe she legitimately has mental health issues because they forced her into a role she's not meant to play. If someone, and I say this jokingly, but I'm dead serious, if someone said, hey, Jason, you're going to be a male supermodel and you're going to pose shirtless on the cover of multiple magazines around the country, and every time you go on TV or anywhere, you got to be shirtless, I would crack under that pressure. That's not the role I'm meant to play. I would crack. I'd be like, this is too much.
Yeah, we would crack you, Jason.
Well,
yes, admit it. Yes.
And so the same reaction that you have to me being on TV or on magazine cover shirtless, that's the same reaction we're having. Like, Brittney Griner's important? Since when? She, who cares? Brittney Griner has something to say about what? She's a...
Yeah, Jason, if Speak for Yourself was under that format, I would just say like, okay, hey, Steve, did you record or DVR Speak for Yourself? I'm like, no, I'm good at the podcast. I'm good at the audio here. But every day, I'd still be listening. I would still be listening, but I'd be listening to it. But I have a question. You say being that tall as a female is pressure in itself and it could bring about issues. I don't disagree. But Jason, let me go back to someone that I'm very partial to because she's from LA. And I've known about her since, because we were in the same years. The product of Morningside High School out of Inglewood, the great Lisa Leslie. Lisa Leslie has carved out a great life and a career. And she doesn't have these issues. And I have a reason why. And I don't want to speak for her. She's always positive. She's always upbeat. I don't think she has this. Look, she's complained about the WNBA pay. I get it. But when I see Lisa Leslie do various things and speak to the media and be part of the media, she seems to have a very upbeat attitude. Like you'd want to be around her. You could talk to her. It'd be friendly. She's amiable. But she's not always pressing the victimhood angle. And I truly believe being a victim all the time or wallowing in the victim Olympics, that in itself can bring about depression and mental issues.
Yeah, when you're, hey, Brittney, we need you to come out here and not take a knee and take a dump all over the United States of America and, say things you don't really believe. We need you to be the face of Black Lives Matter and blah, blah. That's just going along to get along. Everybody's doing it. None of these people believe it. Trust me, I guarantee you Colin Kaepernick has mental health issues from living a lie. And so, anyway, I hope all the people that will write these sympathetic pieces about Brittney Griner over the next few days and weeks, and we'll hear the harrowing story about Alex Stein and all the hate mail she has gotten. None of them will say to themselves, hey, maybe we pushed Brittney into the wrong role. Maybe being a 6'8" woman is burden enough for this woman. Just let her play basketball, let her live in the background, like a lot of people. A lot of people are introverted. A lot of people have insecurities. And we don't force them out front and center. This is your mission, and you're going to change the world. And you and your wife are important because you scissor. It's a joke. It's a joke, and I'm.
You had to go there.
I did. I had to. I'm going to move on to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is jumping out in defense of Nathaniel Hackett, Steve. And he's going after Sean Payton. Nathaniel Hackett, the former coach of the Denver Broncos, now an assistant coach with the New York Jets and one of Aaron Rodgers' confidant. He got the job in Denver based on his work with Aaron in Green Bay. Sean Payton, of course, has taken a dump on the way the Denver Broncos were coached last season. And here's what Aaron Rodgers had to say in response to Sean Payton.
Those comments were very surprising. For a coach to do that to another coach. My love for Hack goes deep. We had some great years together in Green Bay. Kept in touch. Love him and his family. He's an incredible family man, incredible dad. And on the field, he's arguably my favorite coach I've ever had in the NFL. Just his approach to it, how he makes it fun, how he cares about the guys, just how he goes about his business with respect, with leadership, with honesty, with integrity. And it made me feel bad that someone who's accomplished a lot in the league is that insecure that they have to take another man down to set themselves up for some sort of easy fall if it doesn't go well for that team this year. I thought it was way out of line and inappropriate, and I think he needs to keep my coach's names out of his mouth.
Ooh. Uh-oh. Oh.
Whose team you on, Aaron Rodgers or Sean Payton?
First of all, this Aaron Rodgers as a Jet, what a great teammate. This is now a we guy. This is now a we guy, not just me, we, but I have a question, though. I have a question. Was Sean Payton wrong, or was he wrong for saying the truth? Jason, can we be honest about Nathaniel Hackett last year in Denver? We knew by week 3, overmatched. Literally, they took a team that had high expectations. People thought at the very least we're going to be a playoff team. And by mid-October, you kind of knew this guy's in over his head. And look, Nathaniel Hackett is a good football guy. I mean, his dad was a coach at various programs. And maybe he's just one of those guys meant to be a sergeant, but not a general. I think it's one of the toughest things to do in football is making that transition from a highly regarded, well-liked assistant to being the leader. There's a lot of guys like that. Joe Bugel, Norv Turner. I can go down the list. And if Nathaniel Hackett makes Aaron Rodgers comfortable and happy, then his value is infinite with the New York Jets. It really is. But with that said, Sean Payton was not wrong. Jason, from the way he organized that team, the way the offense was ran, Russell Wilson never looked comfortable. And his game day clock management decisions were some of the worst I've ever seen. Look, I'm not saying I would have done it if I'm Sean Payton, but as a media member, for Sean Payton to just throw a guy under the bus and give me something to write about and us to talk about, Sean, game ball. All
right, so Steve is Team Payton. I'm Team Payton as well. But like you, I like what Aaron Rodgers is doing here. He's caping up for his guy. Love it. So I like what Aaron Rodgers is doing, but I like what Sean Payton did even more. And because he did this in sacrifice to Russell Wilson. He's trying to take the stench of last year off Russell Wilson. Sean Payton is all in on Russell Wilson, and I love it, and I respect it. And to me, I'm with you in terms of like, hey, something here is not right. Russell Wilson in Pete Carroll's system looked a certain way and was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career in that Seattle system. And all of a sudden he gets with a rookie head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, and he looks like he's never played football before. I got to blame Hackett before I can disregard the 8, 9, 10 years of Russell Wilson's career before Nathaniel Hackett. And so I think Sean Payton, in a very calculated, smart move, has said, I'm going to rehabilitate Russell Wilson's image and reputation inside this locker room. I don't want guys inside this locker room disrespecting Russell, thinking Russell's on thin ice, thinking Russell was the problem last year. I'm going to put all the pressure on me, Sean Payton, and because he knew these bullets would come. He knew that somebody would call him out for selling out a coach. Hats off to Sean Payton. I think it's a great look for Sean Payton. I think it's a great look for Aaron Rodgers.
Right, I'll just wrap it up like this on this subject. As it relates to Sean Payton, you can rip him all you want, guys. There's a reason why he's there. If Hackett would have just done a bad job, they probably would have said, okay, we're going to give you another year. Jason, he was literally such a disaster. They said it late December, yeah, we're gone. I mean, how many coaches have been so bad you only get 1 year? Just think about that.
That's true. You just made me think of another thing, though. I wonder if some of what Aaron Rodgers is doing is like is behind the scenes. Aaron Rodgers sitting there going, hold on, man, you weren't there. So who's telling you that this was the worst run franchise, that this was a clown show and Mickey Mouse, blah, blah. Oh, Russell Wilson must be telling you that. And so perhaps that's part of what Aaron Rodgers is pushing back against as well, is like Russell Wilson perhaps not taking accountability for having a bad year and telling Sean Payton. And again, I'm speculating, but someone had to tell Sean Payton what went on in Denver. He wasn't there.
Well, one of the things I've read about is that they have told Russell Wilson, and I believe this has to be from Sean Payton, hey, Russell, that office you have upstairs that's by yourself, that's gone. Go to the locker room just like every other player. That seems like a small thing. I actually think it's a big thing. There seemed to be a division within that locker room. There are two separate groups. There was the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. It didn't work. So, look, Russell Wilson now is on the spot. Sean Payton can hopefully rebuild him, get him back to where he was. But make no doubt about it, there's still a lot of pressure on that guy right there.
A lot of pressure, because if he doesn't have success, he'll have no excuses. Yeah. Sean Payton worked very well with an undersized quarterback in Drew Brees.
Yes.
Same opportunity here with Russell Wilson. There's a ton of pressure on Russell Wilson. Sean Payton has relieved some of it. Steve, some breaking news early this afternoon. Andrew Marchand of the New York Post, the head ESPN leaker, he's replaced James Andrew Miller as ESPN's leaker of choice. All the information is fed through Andrew Marchand. I'm not taking a shot at Andrew. I'm just telling you the facts. ESPN is closing in on promoting Doris Burke to the NBA Finals, demoting Mark Jackson, and hiring Doc Rivers in the wake of the Jeff Van Gundy firing, the Post has learned.
So in the mortal words of Mark Jackson, man down, hand down, and there goes that woman. God, you know what? I actually like that first crew. I know you're high on Doris Burke. I have nothing against her. I've never really understood the big deal. She's good at what she does, but you have to understand, I grew up on the greatest basketball announcer of all time, Francis Dale Chick Hearn. So everyone else is just, they're just guys. Or Dick Stockton on CBS. So I grew up with the best. And I kind of like that whole chemistry between Mark and Van Gundy and that other guy, Mike Breen, I think is his name. I enjoyed those three guys. The 5 times a year that I watched basketball, those guys, for 5 times a year, I enjoyed them. Doris, I don't want to say this is a diversity hire, because I'll tell you why. To be fair, she's put in her work. She's good at what she does. She's been acclaimed. So I'm not going to go there. But I don't know. I kind of like Mark Jackson. I'm kind of saddened by this news.
Your criticism is very soft in comparison to mine.
What?
And I absolutely love Doris Burke. I think she does a really good job. She is not qualified to be the number one broadcaster on the NBA.
Oh, geez.
And I really like Doris Burke. Huh. Give me a break, Steve. Give me a break.
What?
You're replacing
I know.
a all-star NBA player, a head coach who mattered in the league for many years. They had great chemistry. They were willing to criticize people during the game, during the broadcast. All of that is out the window. You place a woman in this spot. And again, what Doris Burke does is good. But if you think she's woman enough to criticize these multi-millionaire NBA players and coaches, it's not going to happen. Let me be clear. I want to be crystal clear. Don't anyone take me out of context. I like Doris Burke. I think she's good. I think she's a good change of pace. But I watched this woman, a fan or something touched Russell Westbrook, and she started ranting and raving about how dare the fan and blah, blah. And I'm just like, this worship of the athletes and no one representing anything from a fan's perspective. And everything is about treating these entitled athletes like they're gods. That's what you're going to get from a female broadcaster. They're not, when one of those players looks over, glares, or tries to intimidate, what did you say? What do you know? And again, I know she played a little basketball, but not in the NBA. And this is my problem with ESPN. What's their slogan? Serving sports fans anytime, anywhere. No decision they make has anything at all to do with serving sports fans. This isn't about serving sports fans. This is about serving diversity, equity, and inclusion, ESG score. This is about a political agenda. This has nothing to do with what's best for the NBA or NBA fans. And I like Doris Burke.
Right, that's the thing. I want to make this clear. You do like Doris Burke, I think, but I don't disagree. Look, of course, this is about an agenda. But I just like, the reason why I'm soft on it is, Jason, let's be honest, I'm not watching a lot of games on ABC. I don't even watch a lot of the NBA anymore. But every move, like, didn't ESPN make an announcement that they're going to go with an all-female crew for one day to talk about various women's sports? I mean, they must literally want nobody to watch that network for a day or two. Give me a break, guys. We are now in the NFL training camp. 98% of your coverage needs to be on football, either NFL, college, and a little bit of high school. Nothing else. You don't need to do all this virtue signaling. But, Jason, they are not going to change. They're never going to change.
Steve, and, well, it does hit you, but I don't think it just hits you as hard. This whole Doris Burke thing and what ESPN is doing, it tells you everything about what the true agenda is for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has nothing to do with black men. Hello? Manosphere, right. Black men. This has nothing to do with you. Quit being a cuck, quit being a simp, and wake up. They're pleasuring white women and the LGBTQ with jobs that were meant for you. We love the NFL. It's a black league, and the coaches should be more black. Blah blah blah. And while they hire every woman they can in an executive position, every LGBTQ person in an executive position, and now we look at the NBA, and they just kicked Mark Jackson and Jeff Gundy to the curb, Van Gundy to the curb. For Doris Burke? I like Doris Burke. Doris, don't be mad at me.
Too late.
I like you and respect you, but I just got to tell the truth. I'm compelled to tell the truth. Hey, man, this is the NBA. This is the NBA. What, Beth Mowins wasn't available? Is that Beth Mowins and Doris Burke called the NBA Finals? And y'all keep going for this. Y'all keep pulling that Democrat liberal thing. Yeah, I love Democrat Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all. Gotta be the biggest idiots on the planet if you can't see. This is about the matriarchy and displacing men from positions they earned. I'm not going to ask you to follow that. I'm going to move into your area of expertise. Not all of this is your area of expertise, but your real area of expertise. I'm just sorry. Terrence Crawford put on a show like I have never seen before in boxing. And I say that because I had the greatest amount of respect for Errol Spence. I watched him. I thought, oh, man, this guy's really skilled. He's precise. He's powerful. He's this, he's that. Terrence Crawford made this dude look like a child on Saturday, Steve. It blew my mind. Terrence Crawford, and again, you're the expert, correct me where I'm wrong, but Terrence Crawford is in position now, if he can 2-3 more impressive fights, and you can call it, he's 35, I believe. Whenever he's he's undefeated, he has a chance to go down as one of the all-time greats.
Ooh, that's a big statement. I will say this, and I'll defer to a guy like Doug Krikorian, great old writer, a great friend of mine from the Herald Examiner, LA Times, who was there covered fights from the 70s all the way to the early 2000s. He was there for the era of Ray Leonard, Hearns, Hagler, Duran, the Four Kings, which I believe is the apex of boxing in America. He told me last year over a group dinner at the world-famous Field Training, he said, guys, I think he's the best fighter since Ray Leonard. And I was like, wow, really? You think that much of him? It's not Roy Jones. It's not Oscar De La Hoya. It's not Felix Trinidad, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. He says, no, I think it's Crawford. So after this fight, Sunday morning, I get a call from Mr. Krikorian, and he goes, Steve, what did I tell you last year? And he paid him the ultimate compliment. He said, this guy could have competed with Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, the Four Kings. To me, there is no higher compliment. And Jason, Crawford is the most multi-dimensional, adaptable, versatile fighter in the game. I don't know if he knew this, but he's actually a natural right-hander who switches to southpaw. So there's no one. So whatever you do, he's going to have an answer for. And Errol Spence, from that second round knockdown on, had a look on his face, which became very bloodied and bruised. He couldn't do anything with him. And this is the mastery and the brilliance of what Bud Crawford does. He can lead, but he can really counter. And as Errol Spence got more desperate and became more aggressive and his head started getting out in front, he was running into counter punches. And the reflexes and the quickness, that to me was the big difference. And also Errol Spence has been been physically damaged by the car accident, the eye surgery, and what I call the disparity in lifestyle, where Terrence Crawford keeps in shape every day of the year. He really has no vices in terms of drugs or alcohol. So he's a very well-preserved 35. And I favored him strongly in this fight. I was on the record, went on various platforms. I said KO 10, and it was only a matter of time. And Jason, I was there at Coach JB's house, and it was kind of split on who's going to win. But by the fourth or fifth round, everyone there's kind of in awe. Like, I'm sure you were like, oh, my God, this was supposed to be a fight. But no, it was an exhibition of greatness. And it reminded me a lot of a fight that I covered a long time ago, 3 weeks after 9/11, Bernard Hopkins, Felix Trinidad at Madison Square Garden in 2001, where a respected champion in Bernard Hopkins, who had been kind of overlooked and disrespected, was facing a more popular, more commercially viable fighter in Felix Trinidad. And a lot of people thought that Trinidad, even though he was moving up in weight, he was a more entertaining fighter, he's more well-known, a Puerto Rican icon, was going to chop him up. And the executioner put on one of the most brilliant tactical performances I've ever seen. And it really stamped him as like, you know what? You're the guy. You are him. And I've always kind of thought Bud was that. But I think now this is confirmation from everyone that didn't believe it. Jason, they've got to believe it. Now, I got to tell you, when I'm looking at my Twitter and I see Jason Whitlock talking about boxing, I actually went to your profile and said, okay, is this the Jason Whitlock? Because he only talks about boxing for the Olympics every 4 years. So, by the way, how did you get rooked into talking about the fight? Because I didn't even think you were going to watch it. I'll be honest, Jason.
Oh, God, yeah. No, I certainly would planned on watching the fight because I thought it was going to be super competitive. Errol Spence, you came on Speak for Yourself, I think, right, a couple of times. I really liked him. And my memories of him were like, man, this guy, this is going to be a hell of a fight. And you're going to make me go back and rewatch Bernard Hopkins and Felix Trinidad because you told me that the other night. I'm going to rewatch it. But watching this fight, I always thought that Roy Jones fought at an awkward weight where there was really no competition for him. And so Roy Jones would embarrass people. And I remember I used to enjoy watching Roy Jones embarrass people. And I'm like, this looks like Roy Jones just embarrassing. And so it makes me, is there some competition? How can Terrence Crawford build on this legacy? Who's next that could help him get into that conversation where like, oh, he's as good as Hagler, Hearns, Sugar Ray, and Roberto Duran?
Jason, here's the unfortunate part. there's a rematch clause that is bilateral where the loser of this fight had 30 days to say, okay, I'm going to enforce it. But then the winner can say, well, at what weight class? I think Errol Spence should no longer be at 47. I thought throughout the whole week, just watching this, he looked listless and dreary. And in terms of the energy both fighters gave off, there was an intensity level to Terrence Crawford. I almost thought he was predatory when he got around Errol Spence, who looked, I don't want to say meek, but he kind of backed off. That doesn't always win a fight, but I thought this particular fight, it was very telling. I don't want to see that again. I actually think Errol Spence should think about taking a lot of time off. Okay, so with that said, how does Terrence Crawford get to that upper echelon? If he moves up another weight class to 154 junior middleweight and takes on Jermell Charlo, who was going to actually move up 2 weight classes to take on Canelo, so we'll have to wait. But if he can unify or become undisputed at 54, I think he starts making a run for top 10. Now, this is what I love about Crawford. After one of the knockdowns, he went to the corner, and Jermell Charlo, who's very close with Spence, I think they share the same trainer. They've known each other for years. And Jermell Charlo was very vocal about putting a lot of money on his guy. Him and Bud have barked at each other for years. They do not like each other. Now, what Bud Crawford did was straight out of the 1986 Miami Hurricanes. He walked off that plane in Army fatigues. He was taunting Jermell Charlo. There's video of it that I'll send you, and he basically pointed at him and said, "You're next." Right as the count is going on, he's actually like pointing at Jermell Charlo, saying, "Yeah, I did this to you. You're next." If he does that, and he can unify that division, so that means he's undisputed at 40, 47, and possibly 54. Jason, he's up in that Mayweather-Pacquiao category at the very least, if he accomplishes that.
Well, I'm out of my depth, so I'm not going to comment on the Mayweather-Pacquiao deal, and I got a bias towards the older guys. But he could literally he could challenge Mayweather's reputation. Mayweather retired undefeated. Terrence Crawford could do the same. Last thing, I thought this was humorous. Eminem, he comes into the ring to lose yourself. And Eminem is there, but doesn't lip sync the song.
Right.
He just introduced it. What do you think of that? I thought that was interesting.
What happened? The day or two before the fight, they got introduced by each other on social media. And Eminem said, "Hey, you're my favorite boxer." And Terrence said, "You know what? You should do my walkout or something." So they didn't have time to rehearse it. A lot of times, you kind of know a couple of weeks out, hey, this is going to be my guy. Let's do the tracks. I've actually seen rehearsals for this the day before a fight. If you have pyrotechnics and lighting the bell, so you got to plan this out. So literally, I think Eminem took a flight to Vegas. They gave him a mic. They said, "Okay, why don't you just introduce him and we'll play your song?" But you're right. If you're Eminem, can't you lip sync a song that you wrote and you did? I just do Milli Vanilli. It's good. No one cares. But I thought there was something very interesting about the mindset. When you saw Errol Spence walk out of the ring or walk into the ring, Jason, he had this glazed look on his face. He was like, wow, get going. Meanwhile, Errol Spence a couple of years ago was taunting Terrence Crawford and said, "I'm the big fish. I'm the big fish." That became like a meme. It became his unofficial logo. When Terrence Crawford just strutted out there with a fishnet around him, I was like, oh, God. Oh, God. Yeah, right there. That's one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen, that fishnet.
I want to clear up one rumor. I want to clear up a rumor that I saw circulating the internet. I was not the rapper who walked into the ring with Errol Spence. I just want to clear that up. I don't know if we could find the picture of the fat guy, the shirt that had his shirt wide up. I was like, what? I had to pinch myself and say, am I in Vegas right now? What is going on?
Jason, did you have a fight party or just watch it by yourself?
I was with some family.
Okay. I'm just telling you, Bud Crawford showed that here's the difference. Errol Spence is a very good pro fighter. I like Errol personally, very amiable individual. He's a very good fighter. He'll probably make the Hall of Fame. But there is difference in levels, and on this particular night, I believe Bud Crawford showed that he's a generational talent.
Thank you, Steve. Great job as always. They're hunting up the fat guy picture. Maybe we can toss it in, or I could just unbutton my shirt and, but it was not a pretty sight. Anyway, that's Steve Kim. That is today's show. We'll play some tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be. I just want.